two birds from a book called Cat Kid Comic Club, Influencers.
Interesting.
And what's really wild about this one is that it was made by, like, one of the characters in the book.
What?
Yeah, a young girl named Poppy.
Very cool.
I'm telling you, this little comic is way more powerful than you'd think. I'm so excited to dig into it with you.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing how something so simple can really get you thinking,
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
So in this story, Poppy gives the comic to her dad super late at night, but he's not too happy about it.
Oh, what happened?
Well, he thought she was supposed to be helping her siblings with their comics, not making her own.
Oh, I see.
But who knows, maybe he's about to learn a thing or two from his own daughter, right?
Huh, maybe. So, the comic itself, Two Birds, is about, well, two birds. But these aren't just any ordinary birds. They see the world totally differently from each other, right from the moment they're born.
Yeah, and the way Poppy draws them really shows that contrast. It's simple, like a kid drew it, but you can tell so much about the birds' personalities from their expressions and like their body language.
Exactly. One bird is always looking up, like this, with its wings spread out, and the other one's all hunched over, staring at the ground.
Oh, I love.
You get who they are immediately, even without any words.
It's like one singing this happy little song and the other one stuck in like a grumpy heavy metal song. And it's not just how they look, it's how they react to things. Poppy has these really clear scenes where like they both experience the same thing, but they react in completely opposite ways.
I remember that. Like when they try to fly for the first time,
Right.
they both fall out of the nest, which is like a normal bird thing.
Right, of course.
One of them is all, come on, let's try again, we can do this. And the other's like screaming and get this, even cursing.
Whoa, in a kid's comic?
I know, right? Poppy really went there with that. Yeah. But it makes you think, right?
Yeah.
Even when we're kids, we start to see the world in different ways. And for some people, it's not all sunshine and rainbows, you know?
Oh, absolutely. And it makes you wonder, is one way of seeing things?
Right.
Like, is it better to always be optimistic, or is there something good about seeing the hard stuff too?
Yeah, good point. And then there's that scene where their nests get destroyed in a storm. Like, total disaster. They lose everything.
No.
But one bird is just happy to be alive, like, woohoo, best day ever. While the other's all mopey, saying it's the worst day of her life.
Wow.
It's like they're in different universes, even though they're right next to each other.
It's pretty wild. What's interesting to me is that even with all their differences, they still stay together.
Yeah.
Like, through the whole comic, they're always side by side, so it makes you ask, can you really have two completely opposite points of view and still be okay? That's a great question. And the story keeps going with this idea as they get older and, well, you know, reach the end.
Yeah.
Even when they're facing death, they don't change their views.
Wow.
The one who is always negative is full of regret, talking about all the bad things.
Oh, like what?
She says things like, too tired to walk and too blind to see, and that her whole life has been choked with misery.
That's some pretty heavy stuff for a kid's comic, huh?
It really is. But then you have the other bird facing the same end, and her last word is just, thanks.
Wow, what a difference.
It is, right? And then the comic doesn't end there.
Oh.
Poppy's dad picks it up and starts looking through it. We see this picture of Earth from space, spinning and spinning.
I like that.
And then it cuts back to Poppy's dad on the couch holding the comic.
Yeah.
He looks thoughtful, maybe even a little sad.
Interesting.
He closes the book and goes up to Poppy's room where she's fast asleep. It's like the comic really got to him in a way he didn't expect.
Yeah, it's subtle, but you get the feeling that maybe he sees himself in one of those birds.
Oh, like which one?
The one who's not seeing the big picture,
Yeah.
you know. And now he's looking at his daughter, who made this deep little story, sleeping so peacefully. It's like there's a whole other level to everything now.
Exactly. This isn't just about birds anymore, is it?
No, not at all.
It's about perspective, about being a parent, about the choices we make in how we experience life. And maybe, just maybe, it's about a dad starting to see things a little differently.
Maybe. And we're just getting started.
Stay with us because in the next part of our deep dive, we're going to explore how much this comic reflects our own lives and the choices we make every day.
Welcome back to our deep dive on Two Birds. So we left off with Poppy's dad having a little moment, realizing maybe he's been too focused on rules instead of appreciating his daughter's creativity.
It does make you wonder, like, how often do we get so caught up in the shoulds that we miss all the good stuff right in front of us, you know?
Right. We were talking about how the birds' different perspectives shape their experiences, but what's the big takeaway here? Why does this simple comic feel so deep?
Yeah, it's good. It touches on something we all deal with, like trying to be happy.
Oh, absolutely.
We all want to be happy, but we try to get there in such different ways, just like those two birds.
And the comic really shows how much our happiness depends on how we see things.
For sure.
Those birds went through the same challenges, learning to fly, losing their home in that storm.
Right.
But their reactions were totally opposite.
Yeah, it's crazy.
It's not about pretending everything is perfect or ignoring bad things.
Right.
It's about realizing we can choose how we see those experiences. Do we focus on the worst day, or do we find a reason to say thanks?
It's almost like the comic is saying happiness isn't something you go after, but like a feeling you can create no matter what happens.
Exactly. It's like those things therapists talk about, reframing your thoughts.
Yeah.
Changing how you think about something even if you can't change the situation.
Right, right.
Like seeing the good side of a problem.
It's not always easy to do, though, is it?
No, it's not.
Our brains are kind of set to think in certain ways. It's like a default setting, you know? But maybe Two Birds is showing us that we can change those settings.
And it's worth it. Choosing to see the positive, even when it's hard, can make you feel so much better.
Yeah, I agree with that.
It's like working out. The more you practice being thankful and thinking positively, the easier it gets.
I like that comparison. What I find really cool is that Two Birds doesn't tell you what to think.
It doesn't, does it?
It doesn't say, this is how to be happy. It just shows you this story, this metaphor, and lets you think about your own perspective.
It does. And it works for both kids and adults.
For sure.
It's a kid's comic, but it also makes you think about life and what it means to be human.
Yeah, totally. Speaking of being human, let's talk about Poppy and her dad again. You can't ignore that relationship.
Oh, absolutely.
She makes this really insightful comic, and his first reaction is anger.
I remember that.
He's so worried about rules that he doesn't see how deep her comic really is.
It's like he's that grumpy bird who can't see the good stuff around him. Maybe he's so stressed about being a good dad that he's forgotten to just connect with his daughter.
And I bet a lot of parents can relate to that.
Oh, for sure.
We get caught up in the everyday stuff of being a parent, all the stress and things to do.
Yeah.
And we miss those times when we really connect.
Yeah, we forget to see the world how they see it, you know? Appreciate their ideas and talents, just like Poppy's dad with her comic.
That's a good point. It's not just about being a parent, though, is it?
It's not.
This applies to all our relationships, friends, family, even people we work with.
Totally. Two Birds reminds us to just stop, listen, and try to understand where other people are coming from, even if their views are super different from ours.
Yeah, I love that. And trying to see things from someone else's point of view can be really powerful. It can help us understand ourselves better, too.
That's a good point. And for me, the main thing I got from this is that we have a choice in how we experience the world.
Yeah, I think so, too.
We can focus on the bad stuff, like the pessimistic bird did, or we can look for the good, appreciate the beauty around us, even when things are hard.
I like that.
It doesn't mean ignoring the hard stuff, but it's about getting through it with strength and grace.
And that last panel with the optimistic bird's thanks is so powerful.
It is.
It reminds us that even being thankful for small things can help us fight negativity.
It's something we can do every day. Look for those little happy moments and just say thanks.
It's amazing how much wisdom is packed into this kid's comic. It shows how powerful art and storytelling are, and that we never really stop learning and growing.
And think about it. Poppy made this comic. She's a kid. And she already understands these big ideas about perspective and how it shapes our lives.
It's true. It reminds us that kids are often a lot smarter than we think.
Yeah, they are. They see the world in a fresh way, with a sense of wonder that we sometimes lose as adults.
We should encourage that curiosity in them.
Yeah.
Be open to learning from them, just like they learn from us.
I like that.
Oh,
So
yeah.
that brings us back to what Two Birds is really about.
Right.
It's about being open to different points of view, finding common ground, and realizing we're all in this together.
What if we take that idea even further, though? The comic focuses on two birds with different opinions, but what happens when there are more than two? Imagine a whole flock of birds, each with its own way of seeing things.
Ooh, that's interesting. It's like taking this simple idea and applying it to how complicated our world is.
Exactly. It wouldn't be easy to live in a world with so many different points of view.
I don't think so.
There would be good things, bad things, everything.
It would take a lot of work.
Yeah.
Recognizing and respecting those different views while also trying to find common ground. Understanding that no one person has all the answers.
It's about constantly learning, changing, and growing.
Yeah. Two birds might only have two characters, but it starts a much bigger conversation about how we deal with a world full of different opinions and experiences.
And that's a conversation we need to have.
We do. But for now, let's take a minute to think about everything we've talked about. From the bird's different views to how it affects Poppy's dad and what it means for how we deal with relationships and even society as a whole.
Yeah.
We've talked about happiness, perspective, and how even simple stories can make us think deeply.
It's been great, but there's still more to talk about. Stay with us because in the last part of our deep dive, we'll wrap it all up, sharing our final thoughts and what we learned from this surprisingly deep exploration of two birds. We're back for the last part of our journey into Two Birds. It's really something how this little kid's comic has made us think so much, right?
It has. We started with grumpy birds and learning to fly, and now we're talking about happiness, being parents, and how complex the world is.
It shows you how powerful stories can be. Just a few pictures on a page can start conversations that go in all these interesting directions.
Like Two Birds. It's made us think on so many different levels.
Yeah.
About our own lives, relationships, and how we see everything.
It's the kind of story that sticks with you even after you're done reading. It makes you question things, see things in new ways, and maybe even change how you deal with things.
Before we finish up, I'd like to know what really stood out to you from all this. What were the big things you learned?
Well, what I keep coming back to is how everyone sees the world differently.
Mm-hmm.
It's so easy to think it is the only way,
Yeah.
But Two Birds reminds us that there's something good about all those different ways of thinking. It's like it's asking us to be more understanding, to really try to see where someone else is coming from, even if their opinion is totally different from ours.
And it's not just about listening to what they say.
No.
It's about watching how they act, the little things they do, how they interact with the world.
Right, those small details can tell you more than a whole conversation sometimes.
Exactly. And you know what? When we try to understand someone else, we might actually understand ourselves better too.
That's a great point. And for me, the biggest lesson is that we get to choose how we experience the world. We can choose to focus on the negative, like that one bird did, or we can look for the good things, appreciate the beauty, even when things are tough. It doesn't mean we ignore the problems, but we try to deal with them with grace and strength.
I love that.
Yeah.
And that last panel with the optimistic bird's simple thanks,
Yeah.
it's so powerful. It reminds us that being thankful, even for the little things, can really help us fight off negativity.
It's like a practice we can do every day. To look for those moments, those little bits of joy, and just say thanks for being able to experience them.
Exactly. So much wisdom in a kid's comic, huh?
Yeah.
It shows how powerful art and storytelling are, and that we never stop learning and growing.
That's for sure. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into Two Birds. We hope it's given you some new ways to think about things and inspired you to see the beauty in all the different ways people see the world.
And we always want you to keep talking about these things.
Yeah.
What resonated with you? How do you see the world? And how can you make your own thanks count today? Until next time, keep exploring.